Hey there, guys. Welcome to After the Bell Rings. Absolute pleasure to have you here with us today. Another episode with another experienced educator. Last week, I was joined with John Tate. That was an absolute fantastic show, by the way. If you didn't get into that, guys, that was all about organizing and preparing your home, optimizing your home for learning. So if you've got children and you're supporting them with home learning, that episode is perfect for you. Today, our episode is all about understanding an Ofsted report. If you don't know what an Ofsted report is and you've got a child that goes to school, well, this is the perfect episode for you. If you want to know a little bit more about an Ofsted report, it's also the episode for you because I'm joined here today by Phil Sharrock. He is a former head teacher, a foster carer. He actually got a school to inadequate all the way to good in the space of 15 months. So it's an absolute pleasure to have you here with us, Phil.
Hi. Hi, how are you, sir? That was glorious. Keep going. I enjoyed that. Keep it coming. Yeah. Keep it going.
I'm looking forward to plucking your brains today. So just to let you guys know as well, Phil's got a course on our platform, Guide Plus, and it's a course that is for carers or social workers or anyone like that that wants to understand about how they can support their child at school. It's so informative. I would just recommend you go and listen to it. I heard the course that Phil made before I spoke to Phil. So what that's done for me as a host on this show and someone that's having a chat with Phil, it's made me look forward to having a chat with him because he shared some of his views and his perspective and his expertise on this course. So absolute pleasure to have you here with us today, Phil. Am I right? You're a father and a foster carer? Is that
I
correct?
am, yeah. My kids are 18, 16, 13, and I'm also a foster carer as well. And my foster children are 9 and 15. Yeah, so I'm a busy chap.
Busy chap.
I'm a busy chap in semi-retirement. Yes, indeed.
Very experienced. And you've been a head teacher. How many schools have you been a head teacher at?
1, 2, 3, 4. I have four around the country, but I've also gone in a sort of supportive role in about 3 other schools to work with the head teacher in a consultancy sort of perspective, really. So, but I've had my name above the door in 4 schools across the country, from here in the West Midlands.
Yeah.
I've flown around the country, so and done what I had to do.
Fantastic. So I'm going to start by asking, so today's all about Ofsted. Well, not Ofsted, more specifically an Ofsted report. And we're going to look at the criteria of an Ofsted report. We're going to look at what a parent should be looking at. So if a parent's trying to choose a school, or a parent's got a child at a school and they're looking at a Ofsted report, what parts of that criteria should they look at that should inform their decision? I've got some Ofsted report examples as well that we're going to look at together. So hopefully any parents or anyone that's interested in this stuff and wants to learn about this stuff after this episode, they will have a better understanding. So my first question is what is an Ofsted report and what are they reporting on, Phil? What are they reporting on? What is this report for someone that has no idea?
Right. Well, we need to educate parents about what Ofsted is in this country, because its press is very much of an all-powerful, everybody's frightened of them and everybody hates them within the education sector. That's very much how they're promoted and seen in the media and out there in the real world. A report is a summation of what they find when they come into school, but all they do is check on what the school already thinks about itself, right? Based on their guidelines, based on their inspection schedule, which they share with everybody all the time. If they want to make changes, they put it out to consultation and everybody talks about it. And then they say, look, if we're going to come and look at a school, these are the sort of parameters in which we're going to look. So they don't hide anything from schools. They don't try and trick schools. They don't try and make life difficult for schools. And I think that it's very much dependent on how leaders within the schools and teachers within the schools actually approach it. I've been through, I've lost count. I've lost count of how many I've led and actually how many I've been involved in. But never once have I come across an inspector, and maybe I'm lucky, but maybe I'm just the lucky one. But I've never come across an inspector who hasn't wanted anything other than the best for the kids that they're in the school that they're actually coming in to inspect. But you've got to remember, all it is a judgment on what the school thinks about itself. So it's very clever because they're not, they're only checking on what the school actually thinks. So that's what somebody has to remember. And at the end of it, they'll write you a quick summation, which sort of tells you whether they're in their framing of it, it'll be their report, but it's basically telling you whether they agree or disagree with what the school actually thinks.
Yeah. So my second question for you then, Phil, is how can a parent use one of these reports to inform their decision making, whether that's choosing the school or just making a decision or just want to know more about the strengths of the school or the areas of development? Is it? Would you even say it's useful?
Well, the latest data suggests that less and less parents are actually looking at an Ofsted report when they're making a decision about their school, because. And I suspect that's because it can be a bit narrow in its perspective, according to parents. Now, there are lots of different areas to that report, and I'm sure that you'll ask me about them in a little bit. But for me, first things first, it can be a useful tool, but it is just a snapshot of 2 days in that building at a particular time, right? And remember, it's only confirming or challenging the school in terms of what the school already thinks about itself, right? So, it should be on the school website. It has to be there. So if you're interested in looking at a school, or you're interested in, how a school's doing, it gives you an external snapshot is what it does. But the most important thing is, and whether you read into the judgment, the headline judgments of inadequate, requiring improvement, good or outstanding, whether you want to look at those sort of things or not is entirely up to you. It's the finer nuances within the report that you really have to look for and look at how a school is actually performing. Mm-hmm. I've been in schools that are, they're good, but they are on a real downward trajectory according to Ofsted. I've also worked in schools that are inadequate, but on a real upward trajectory. And, they can have that report against them that says inadequate, but actually, if you came in today, it's good. So, so because the process takes time, you've also got to remember that, first things first, when you pick up an Ofsted report, look at the date. I'm currently working with a school of when it was, and it was last inspected in June 2007.
Wow. So what's this school's Ofsted rating at the moment?
Outstanding. Well, it's considered to be outstanding, and parents still ring up and say, "Can we send our school there because it's outstanding?" Wow. And the head says, "Yeah, but it was close to 15 years ago. Don't. It's managed to slip through. I mean, the school is absolutely prepped and ready, and expecting an inspection any day. It has carried that banner for such a long time, and as a profession, it's given such kudos and such a thing. A school gets an outstanding, and you can guarantee there'll be a 30-foot banner on the wall, the next day to say we're outstanding. And I suppose as a profession and as a profession, this is a personal point of view, I find that quite silly, really, because it only confirms what I already knew. So if I was outstanding, I knew I was outstanding. They just came in and ticked the box to say, yes, you are. Well, thanks very much. If I'm a good professional and I know what I'm doing, then I don't need Ofsted to come in and confirm that. I know it. I know what I'm talking about. I know if my school's good. I know if it's inadequate. Sometimes, I've been in inadequate schools and I've worked in inadequate schools and had an Ofsted inspection. So, which have been brilliant, because I've turned around and said, this school's inadequate. But I know it, but I've got a really good plan here to get this school out of difficulty quickly. And they go, absolutely, you're inadequate. There you go. But we totally trust you, leave you to it. And so they come back every term, and within as fast as they come back, you get it into a place where it's good. So is it useful? Yes, it can be, but it's just a snapshot of a moment in time, checking on what the leaders of the school thought anyway.
Yeah, and fault me if I'm wrong here as well, Phil. If a school is graded outstanding, that does mean Ofsted don't have to return to inspect the school for like a certain amount of time, that which could be 5 years plus, like the example of the school that you
No, change the rules. They changed the rules about it was about a year or two ago, something like that. They changed the rules because, quite rightly, people were saying, yeah, you are right in that Ofsted schools that became outstanding were then they didn't have to be inspected again. They were okay. They were sort of deemed to be, they were going to be fine as long as their data showed that they were still performing in a very, very good way in terms of their results. Ofsted would not go back. But they changed that a couple of years ago because, quite rightly, you get parents, teachers, head teachers, would turn around and go, hang on a minute, you haven't been here for 10 years. That's a whole cohort of children that have gone through this school, from reception all the way through till year 6 or secondary, who've gone all the way through this school and nobody's checked on what's going on. So, and I don't have a problem with accountability. I think it's fine. It's public money, I think it's good that we have an inspectorate. I argue vociferously in its current format whether it's fit for purpose, but I really, really don't have a problem with it in a form of accountability. It's fine. We're spending public money. We should be checked, and it's okay.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. One of my other questions for you is, so on an Ofsted's report, one of the categories are effectiveness of leadership and management, and that can obviously be graded between 1 and 4, 1 being outstanding, 4 being, requires improvement. So does that inadequate? So if we are saying the leadership is ineffective, will that impact someone's child, or is that just the leadership? Where's the link between how does this impact my son, a manager? Inadequate, because it's quite a big jump, right? Okay,
step back, take a little bit of common sense. If a school's been really badly run, what do you think is going on in the school? Teaching's not going to be that good, is it? Yeah. Are your kids, is the behavior in that place going to be all right? Are they developing the kids' personal welfare and well-being? And are they developing that in a really good way? You might have good teachers, right? And this is a bit of a contentious point, but this is what I found from going around the country. Whenever I've gone into a school that's in an inadequate position, I can absolutely guarantee you that every single time it has been the leadership and management of the school that has been bad.
Wow.
The book stops at the head teacher's door.
Yeah.
So and that's why a lot of people don't want to do it.
So would you say that's probably one of the biggest factors then in that category there, the leadership and management?
Yeah, it's crucial. You've got to have strong and good leadership and management within the school for a school to be able to flourish. You'll not go into an outstanding school that's not got really, really good leadership. That's just a misnomer. In a way, the Ofsted criteria is put together a bit like a deck of cards, and if leadership and management fail, so for example, the people who are trained inspectors, they've asked me 3 times to be an inspector. I've told them to clear off every time. Excuse me. But the people who are trained to be Ofsted inspectors are all experienced professionals. They're not daft. They're current serving head teachers. But they've got a wealth of leadership experience of running schools and knowing what schools should be. Yeah. They take into account a school's socioeconomic situation and where it is and everything else. So if you're in a leafy suburb in Surrey, they'll take that into account compared to hardcore inner city in Birmingham, which I worked in for many, many years. They're totally different, but they'll take that context into account, right? And these people know what they're talking about. So if they walk in the door and they, before they even walk in the door, they've had a 90-minute conversation with the head teacher the day before. If the head teacher span them a yarn and said everything's brilliant here, yeah, when you go into something, within 10 minutes, whether it's good or not. You've got to, when you've got that kind of experience, wherever you walk in, you'll know whether you can sense it, you can feel it, whether it's a happy place, whether it's clean, tidy, everything's really organized, everything should be where it should be. The physical environment looks good. People are happy. People are, okay. The kids are sweet enough. And and lovely, and everything that should be in a school, and you know that you can pick that up, and in an hour at maximum, and a lot of the times in the Ofsted inspections that I've made, they've pretty much made their judgment by the time they've been there in the morning. They know where they are because they can see it. You can see it, and you can do it. Now they dig down and they look at things a little bit deeper. But if a head teacher's turning around and saying everything's brilliant and wonderful across the board, if they come in and see that, they'll go, leadership and management know what it's talking about.
Yeah.
If they come in and don't see that, and they see something that, wow, no, this really isn't how the leadership and management see it. So then they'll start to dig. Then they'll start to use their professional knowledge and experience within the criteria to start to dig down into what's wrong, what they feel, and what could be wrong. Mm-hmm. If the leadership and management now in the current Ofsted criteria is very much about middle leaders. It's very much about curriculum leaders and people who are in charge of the subjects that are delivered across the school. 4 or 5 years ago, it was very much head and deputy and the top people. Now it's nuanced a lot more into the middle leaders. So if they, if the head teacher's talking a load of cobblers, they will find out. And if the head doesn't know what's going on in school, then it's a deck of cards. The quality of education isn't how it's supposed to be seen. The behaviour is not there. The personal development isn't how it should be. An early years gets its own sort of separate judgment. So there's all these different areas, but they all come from leadership and management. That's a crucial one for the rest of the school. You can have some really strong middle leaders, but if you've got a poor head, it'll bring the school down.
If you've got if
you've got a really good head, they will know if they've got a weak middle leader.
Yeah.
And they will turn around to Ofsted and say, my history isn't that strong. We're doing this to support them. Right. And because that's all that they're doing, they're just checking that you know what you're talking about. So as long as you know what you're talking about, you'll be fine. They'll just give you the judgment that you were expecting.
Yeah.
No surprises. There shouldn't be. There should never be any surprises. Where you see it in the press and all hell's broken loose and everybody's dropped down grades and everything's, Ofsted are horrible, Ofsted have gone wrong. No, what they found is that what the school thought actually isn't going on in that school. That's it. That's all that they do. And that's when they get all upset, because usually they've thought that it was good or outstanding, and they've turned around and said, actually, no, it requires improvement. Yeah. It ain't as good as you thought it was. And forgive me, the inspectors are very reasonable people. They've always been. I've never met anybody who isn't a very reasonable professional, willing to discuss and talk about things. And if you build that relationship with them and get them on your side about what's going on in your school, so they've got a really good understanding about it. If they've got questions about it, they'll give you the opportunity to go and find the answers and come back.
Yeah.
If you're a belligerent idiot who turns around and says, no, my school's good, that's it, end of story, here's my evidence, and the evidence says, yeah, but that evidence says you're requiring improvement, then they'll sort of go, this is now going to turn into a bit of a tricky one because it's not as good as it could be. Ofsted can be a lifesaver for a school. I've been the head of a school, and I'll keep this one anonymous. It was without a doubt the worst school I've ever been in. Right? It was terrible. It had been neglected for years by the local authority. They really had put nothing into it, and it was in a terrible state. And I'd been there about 6 weeks, and Ofsted rang. And when I picked the phone up, my first words to the inspector were, "Oh, thank God you've rang. Thank God you've rang." and he said, "We don't usually get that." I said, "No, because I need you here. I need you here to verify where we are in this school, and so I can get the help here that is needed."
Wow.
So
I've heard that point of view before.
Yeah.
That's like the end of the stick type thing, isn't it?
Yeah. So it can be an incredibly powerful thing in terms of improving things for kids, in terms of the resources. Does an Ofsted inspection improve a school? No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. All it does is write a report. It doesn't improve it. That's where I'd like to see it change, actually. But that's a different discussion to tonight.
What I'm going to do, Phil, I've got an Ofsted report here, actually, and I'm just going to share my screen. Just bear with me 1 second. There we go. Can you see that?
It's an old one. When was that? Yeah, 4 years ago. Yeah, there you go.
2016.
Yeah.
So the reason why I chose this one, it's interesting because obviously we've got areas that require improvement, areas that it's a little bit of a mixed bag.
Yep.
I just thought, so like, let's just say, so this is one that the school may still use. Let's just say a parent's downloaded this, they've gone onto the school website or the DFE website, they've downloaded this about their child at school. To me, I think for someone that's got no history in academics or anything, I'm a former teacher, so I'm a bit more aware of Ofsted and where to look. But someone that's just seen this for the very first time, you know, where do they start? And I know you spoke about, you know, the effectiveness of leadership and management. Where do I look first? What would you suggest?
Well, first thing is look at the date. It's 4 years old. So if you were looking at your child going into that school, that was 5 years ago. You know, so you know, when that inspection was done, the kids who were in year 6 were in year 1. They were little. So, you know, in 5 years, you could have had a massive change of staff. You know, you could have had a lot of staff who got through that inspection in November 16, and they could have cleared off, and it could be a completely different school and cohort and everything else that's in that school. So it's 5 years ago. You know, so take it with a wee bit of a pinch of salt, because it's, you know, if this is a school that I went to look at today, I'd sort of say, okay, an Ofsted report is part of the whole picture, isn't it? It's a piece of the jigsaw puzzle that you put in there that has a part to play in enabling you to make a decision about whether you think that school is right for your kids.
Yeah. Now, what are the other pieces of the jigsaw then? So if you're saying this is one of the pieces of the jigsaw that should inform your decision, what would you say the other pieces are? Go
see the school, visit it, walk around it. How does it make you feel? How do they get you? I'm for many years, Ofsted every so often change their criteria to the dismay of the teaching profession, right? Which is just stupid. Because if I went and looked at 2,000 schools and I found that, I'll tell you how it's worked. Back in 2016, it was all about data. It was all about results. It was all about standards, right? For primary schools, it was all about English and maths combined score. In secondary school, it was all about GCSE results and Progress 8, right? So it was all about the results at the end of it. So what happened is, quite naturally, because Ofsted wields this banquet of fear over everything, what happened is all these schools then went out to become exam factories, to become the best at creating examinated little children. And at primary, I took deep offence at this because I'm a primary specialist. And schools became exam factories. It was a race to the top of the exams, because if you got really, really good exams, you'd be outstanding and you'd never be inspected, right? Now, that's what the Ofsted criteria, inadvertently, they will admit, created. All right. So after a certain amount of time, after inspection, let's say 15,000 more schools, they've said, okay, this is what we see. Okay, this, you know, after all these years, we found out that you're creating little exam factories. They never put it quite like that, but that's what they were doing, right? And Ofsted was part of that problem. Government didn't help, but that's another discussion. And so they said, well, look, you know, when we've been looking around, this, because you've been creating exam factories, we want to know, we're going to change our criteria. So what we want to know now is, how are you getting there? How are you getting to these fantastic results? We're going to come and have a look at your curriculum. What are you doing? Right? So what are you doing in school all the time now that helps your kids get this absolutely fantastic grade? If you are thrashing these kids to the point of being in like a sweatshop for 6 hours a day, thrashing them at these tests and English and maths, nothing more, then you're going to get pulled up, because that is not how kids should be going to school, right? That's not what you want for your kids, right? I don't know any parent in the world who wants that. Well, I shouldn't say world, because there are some countries who do teach like that. But I don't know anybody in this country who wants their kids to go to school to be just thrashed to pass a test, particularly in primary.
Yeah, no way.
No, I don't think any parent gives a damn about, unless they're the type that are just major competitive mum and dad who want to know that, oh, my daughter got, you know, they're grade to depth, you know, in all year bands. It's like, oh God, well, come on, they're 8. They're 8. What are you talking about? But this is the game that gets played, you see. So now it's all about curriculum. Now it's all about how are you getting there? What bespoke curriculum are you developing and designing that is going to be perfect for your kids so that they can achieve the higher results? Yeah. So what we found is since the new inspection schedule, you've got lots of outstanding schools have come right down because they're, then they've now been told you require improvement. Because all you're doing is you're just teaching kids English and maths. You're not looking at the personal development. You're not looking at a broad range of experiences and curriculum excitement that needs to be done. The national curriculum is there for a reason. It's there to give a standardized thing across the board. It's interesting that the guy who invented it said it should go, and I think it's the worst document that we have in a British education system. It should be banned, or it should be completely ripped to pieces and made incredibly small. Because I don't, and I never will, understand how a kid needs to learn in the centre of Birmingham, right, where it's tough. If you're in Handsworth or Aston, in that area, or Bordesley Green or Alum Rock, in the middle of Birmingham, where it's tough, and the deprivation is high, and you've got lots of issues to deal with within the community and everything else, how on earth can then kids need to learn exactly the same thing as Farquhar down in the wonderful, deepest, darkest Surrey, when everybody is living in a £3.5 million mansion, right? They don't need the same thing. It's wrong, right? Now, that said, academies don't have to follow the national curriculum. They can follow whatever they want. So an Ofsted report is part of a jigsaw. Visit the school and make your decision based upon what do you want for your child. I would always say, and I've got kids, as a parent and also as a foster carer, I look at a school primarily from a personal and social welfare perspective.
So don't you look for wouldn't you look for the highest grade school? So I
don't give a damn. They're primary school kids, Nathan. Yeah. They're kids. So I don't care about the SATs results the SATs results and the tests at the end of year 6 are there for the school. They're not there for the child. Yeah. It's just a way of tracking the kids. It doesn't matter. I would rather have a 10, 11-year-old little boy or girl who loves going to school and loves learning and is a well-rounded, happy young child. To me, that's more important than an exam result when you're 10, 11.
Yeah. To be honest, last week we looked at Steiner education, Steiner Waldorf, and obviously a lot of what you're saying is similar to our Steiner expert that we had on the show, and he was talking about, he believes that, kids are doing tests way too early. Yeah. They shouldn't be doing anything. There should be no pressure on academia until they're at least 7 years old. And he was saying a lot of the similar things to what you're saying, actually.
Go to the most successful education systems in the world, such as Finland, Estonia, Canada. They don't have, their kids don't really start school officially till they're 6, 7 years old. We test our children more than any other country in the world.
Yeah,
we thrash our children in tests, and we do it because politicians like the control and the power.
Yeah,
that's why, and they've created a system that they have absolute control and fear over, and the profession is impotent to be able to do something about it.
Controversial.
It is the way that it is. If you don't like it, well, go to an independent school, go to a Montessori, go to a free school, do something that's different. Don't put your kid in a mainstream school, because that's mainstream in Britain. That's it. It's not that it's controversial. It's my analogies might be, but at the end of the day, the data that is produced for a school in the SATs results at the end of year 6 is absolutely nothing to do with how your child is going to perform and how they're going to do in the future. It is a set of data that is created to measure the school, and then it creates a start point for the secondary school.
But what about things like behaviour and safety of the pupils? That's inadequate by Ofsted. Let's just say that's been graded by inadequate by Ofsted. Does that mean literally your child is more vulnerable in that school? And
I would say, I would say so. But if behaviour is coming out as inadequate, I would argue that leadership and management will probably be inadequate. Your quality of teaching and learning will probably be inadequate, because behaviour runs through all different areas. We're not just talking about a punch up over a football on the playground. We're talking about major disruptions within the classroom to the point where things are probably unsafe for people, and everybody's running around looking and watching out for themselves because it's feral. I'm a great believer in a therapeutic and approach to children, and having an understanding of trauma and attachment. Absolutely. I've seen too many kids with traumas and difficulties, and my schools are very nurture based, and we have an understanding. But if you put 4, 5, 600,000, 1,500 kids and people in a building together, you have to have rules, because if you don't, it'll be anarchy. So it's having reasonable rules, and it's having reasonable rewards, because in life, if you do exceptionally well, you get rewards. That's great. And if you don't do so good, then you need that support to pick you up and get yourself to go again. And Ofsted will pick up on that. I think the politically correct sort of thing of, everybody's a winner, everybody gets a certificate, everybody gets a medal just for turning up. No chance. I cannot stand that kind of thing, because in life, in every competition that you ever watch, in any competition that you ever enter, there's only one winner. Everybody else is a loser. So you may as well get used to losing, because you're going to lose a damn sight more than you win. Yeah. So we set kids up to fail if all we do is reward them for doing what they normally should do. It's about having a high expectation and making sure the kids raise themselves up to that expectation. If they find it hard, give them help. If you do that, Ofsted will be very much, you're doing everything that you can to improve everything that's going on in this school. Great stuff. But like I say, I'd tell them that anyway. So they're only confirming what I think.
So what to conclude then? So what I've got gathered from that, if a school's got like inadequate, requires special measures for certain areas, that is definitely red flags. But if a school's, outstanding in every department, every bit of criteria, when you still need to visit the school, you should go.
Absolutely.
That's not a green flag. That's not a green flag.
No.
Yeah, that's
because it might be an exam factory.
Yeah.
It depends what you want for your kid. If you want your child to excel in exams and become a robot in examinations, that might be the perfect school for you. If you want your primary, and again, forgive me for focusing on primary, because that's where my head tends to sit. But for me, with primary school children, I want them to have fun. I want them to love going to school. I want them to develop a love of learning. I want them to be happy. I want them to be, yes, of course, I want them to be safe, but I want them to develop a love of learning, a love of finding out about things, a love of, friendship and those basic things and skills that we should be filling the kids in primary with awe and wonder and making them think, wow, what a fantastic world we live in. And so they want to come home and find out about things more and use the technology. Don't be afraid of it. Use the technology to be able to advance their learning. All this tech isn't a bad thing as long as it's trained and used in the right way. So
I do it's having that. Do you not think we're transitioning more to that holistic approach?
And we should. It's the 21st century. It's, this education system has been set up for about 120 odd years, and it ain't moved. It's never changed. And it's a factory production model and an industrial model. And it has been for, since the Industrial Revolution. And the one thing that the pandemic showed us is that we can and should move to a more hybrid learning for our children. We should. There's no doubt about it, because I know that there are many, many children who absolutely flourished under lockdown.
So I was in a secondary school in Sheffield during that lockdown period. So I taught some students that were working from home because of school closures. And it was a mixed bag, to be totally honest. Yeah. What I found is there was a lot of students that were in the grey area. They weren't high achievers. They weren't low performers. They were just in this grey area. Mm-hmm. I found that they were the ones that really excelled. But I found maybe the students that were a little bit disengaged, unfortunately, they fell off the radar. Yeah. They really fell behind. Yeah. And then your high achievers kind of stayed around with the same. Mm. That was kind of my experience of where I was. Yeah, that's what I found with the students. And I did, like you say, I had so many kids saying, oh, I really love this and I really loved that. And
my son and daughter, they've kind of been hit by it. My daughter particularly, the last two, she's just started college this September. So she's really been hit by it for the last couple of years. And the thing is, what I'll say is, without a shadow of a doubt, the way that we have schools organised and the curriculums that are, and the accountability structures, particularly at secondary with GCSEs and Progress 8, children do. This is where it all goes horribly wrong. We force children into subjects in particular areas for the EBAC, really. And they are forced into studying things that they are not good at, don't have that much interest in, and really they are not, I can't say they're wasting their time, but they're certainly not engaging. It's certainly not the best way to engage them, right? And to put a very generalized sort of figure on it, I think that schools in the current setup suit about a third of the kids, right? A third of them, they're all right. They like school. If you're of a particular proclivity, an academic, right? And I'll say this as an academic, because I'm a reasonably academic kind of guy, right? It suited me. I was fine in school. I loved the study. I loved the revision. I loved passing an exam at the end of 2 years, which I did in 1985, which is now what the kids do in 2021. They study for 2 years, revise, and pass an exam. It's no different than when I did O-levels in 1985, right? Mm-hmm. World hasn't changed, has it? Really? Come on. Yeah. So for those third, for the me's, I think school's great because I was academic. I was interested in school. I liked school. I went, and there was no behaviour problems, and I was great. And it gave me opportunities to play sport, and I could learn. Great. Right. Now then, 2 years below me is my brother. Okay. He ain't academic in the slightest. Right. My brother has got a brilliant pair of hands, right, and passed O-level woodwork. Okay. And he only scraped through that because he got an A on his practical piece, but got an E for his written piece. And they threw it together and he just about scraped through. But my brother burnt his books on the gates and said, never again. He went out there. He's now a site manager for building sites, and he builds houses. He can put a kitchen in with his eyes shut. He's a carpenter by trade. Me, I can't hang a picture on the wall without getting a command picture up, right? We all have our own skills. We all have our own talents. We all have our things that we are good at, right? What the English education system does, and I'm sorry we've gone off Ofsted a little bit, is pander to that particular proclivity who have academia built into them, right? They will flourish. The next third, some of them will get it, some of them won't, and they'll battle through. But for a third of our kids, it's a complete and utter waste of time. And I think that we should be looking at a more hybrid model, and we prove that we can do it as a profession with the pandemic. Yeah, I think English and maths. Yeah, you got to be able to read, write, and have basic mathematical skills, to work your way through life. I think, but that should be the only thing that you do all the way through. The other thing that people should be taught is life skills and real life. What's a bloody bank account? How much is interest? What's the the thing? How do you get a mortgage?
Some schools are. So the school I was at, they did have a lesson called life, and it was basically SHE. And but
for how long? Yeah, for how long?
It wasn't a priority. It was 20 minutes.
They'll do it. They'll do it as a token gesture to say, yeah, we teach kids all about real life and all that. No, you don't. Yeah. So I think something like that could be a really powerful thing to do with kids.
One last question.
But after that, sorry, I'll be quick. After that, I think kids should determine what they want to learn and where they want to go. Yeah. So if you're very hands-on, you should be following a curriculum guided by a teacher, which enables you to do that. Whichever way you want to go, because it's the 21st century. This is Britain. Can we not do that?
Yeah, and that's what a lot of free schools do. Like, the APs, the PRUs and that, and that's why they are successful with students that were unable to access the curriculum, which we are both aware of. One last question before we run out of time is, so do you think there's a correlation between the criteria that Ofsted want from schools and what schools are doing? So like you saying, schools are doing this and that, and it's not really benefiting the child, but if they did what they wanted to do to benefit the child, Ofsted come along and go, this is inadequate.
No, they wouldn't. Because if you're doing what's right for the children of your school, you will get the progress, you will get the results, you'll end up with happy kids. But it's the leadership that have to have the courage to go and do that. If you run your school based on an Ofsted, which let's be really honest about this, Nathan, it's 2 days every 5 years. Who the hell runs a business based on 2 days? And it is a business. Who runs a business on the basis of 2 days every 5 years? The dog's got in. Give me a sec.
Yeah, no worries. Right, guys. So I think that was a perfect segue for the That was a perfect segue to the end of my webinar anyway, Phil. Don't worry about it. So we've unfortunately run out of time, and obviously I enjoyed that conversation about Ofsted, and there's so many more topics that we're going to pluck your brains on in the future. Things like the national curriculum, alternative provisions, all of those things that you're really, really passionate about. Thought we'll do this one today to give parents a basic understanding about Ofsted and what it is and your thoughts on it and how it can impact your child. And I hope you've definitely learned from this conversation that we've had, viewers. I've definitely learned. I've learned, that if a school does say outstanding, 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 it's not a green flag. It's not the green light. Go and visit the school, get a feel for it. And if a school does say, it's inadequate for the safety of your child, then treat that quite seriously, because that does mean your child could be more vulnerable at that school. It does mean that maybe they're not managing bullying in the same way the outstanding school is. So that was really insightful, Phil. I appreciate your time being with us today. Absolute pleasure. And I look forward to having you on some future shows, Phil.
Thanks, Nathan. I really appreciate it. Thanks very much. Great stuff.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.